And we are live. Good evening, everyone. I am Dana, the Angry Citizen, coming to you tonight from Brewer, Maine. And today is October 24th of the year 2024, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm going to be interviewing a man that I met recently here in Maine at the third annual Maine Freedom Rally and Health Choice Maine Retreat in July. He came to speak to us, and I enjoyed meeting him very much and was encouraged especially by anyone willing to run for governor, which is, I assure you, no small thing. And I admire him tremendously for that. Got a chance to meet, speak, know each other a little bit. I was impressed with this man from the little I knew of him at the time. I've researched him a bit, and I did ask him if he would come on with me on a podcast so that we could have him present himself to you, we, the people of Maine, personally, and we would be able to make up our own minds about whether we feel we would like to vote for him for the position of governor. I'm going to certainly do that myself as it stands right now, unless something changes, and I would encourage you to do the same. And so I'm going to bring him on now. Please welcome him. His name is Robert Wessels, and you can check him out at voterobertwessels.com. Welcome, Robert Wessels. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dana. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thrilled to have you. When you and I met, we talked, and you said the same thing to me that a lot of people say when they're discussing running for office or when they are, in fact, getting ready to do it, which is that they need a lot of money. And of course, this is true. But I had a theory a long time ago, and I believe I've seen this proven out to be true, that you don't need money so much as just to get your face in front of people and ask them to vote for you and have them do it. And even if you don't spend any money, a lot of the money that's spent in political campaigns, as we all know, goes to TV ads, television advertising, as well as campaigns and people make calling, mailers, postage, and so forth. And it shouldn't be that expensive. Like, we should be seeking you out, okay? Because we should be looking for the person that's going to do this job the right way and demand that they do and hold them accountable. And I'm thrilled to bring you on because it's my opportunity to help. I love my state, but we're in deep trouble, as you know, in a lot of ways. And I want to make sure that the right person gets in there. And I believe you're that man. I really do. And I'm thrilled to have you here to present yourself to Maine and whoever else, and nationwide, maybe, and see if hopefully we can get enough support behind you to get elected in 2026. So let me ask you first off, I went to your website, read all about your, biography and all that good stuff, but please, from your own mouth, just give us a brief, who is Robert Wessels so that we can all know you a little better.
Yeah, we'll try to sum up 45 years, right?
Perfect. It's 60 seconds, okay?
Exactly, right? So who is Robert Wessels? First off, I think it's important to say that I live in South Paris, Maine. So that's the western part of the state, about half an hour west of Auburn, for those of you who aren't aware of where South Paris is. And I guess first off, I'm a husband and I'm a father. So my wife and I got married in 2001 here in South Paris, and we now have three, I'd say kids, but that's not really truthful, I guess. Our oldest is now 20. It seems unbelievable. And our middle son is 18, and my daughter is 16 and just got her license. And so she's loving that and driving all around. And so we did decide, one of probably the biggest decisions of our marriage was, and it was not political at the time, but was we decided to homeschool all three of our kids. And so my wife went to college for education and just had this deep passion about the quality education she can offer the kids. And it's funny because when Josh was, 3 or 4, she came to me and said, "Hey, I really want to homeschool the kids. I really think this is the right thing to do." And we made the decision for her to stay at home and do that. My one thing is, I'm like, okay, but they can't be weird. When I was growing up, there were not many homeschoolers, and many of them just struck me as it just, I guess, weird but just socially, they didn't interact well. And so that was my one thing that I mentioned to her. And I can tell you these kids have so much social uh, life. I'm almost like, okay, guys, you guys need to tone it down. We need to do some stuff here at the house. But so that has been an absolute wonderful experience, and thrilled that we did so. Life changing, I believe, for them. I grew up on a farm, and even though I would not call myself a farmer, we do have I'm part owner of what I could only call a hobby farm. Basically, there's three of us immediate family: my father-in-law and my sister and brother-in-law, uh, all put together, and we have cattle, we have beef and chickens, sometimes pigs, and it really just we did it. We've started it probably 4 years ago, and the reason we went into that was for a great source of untainted food, and just really looked at
Right.
the importance of that food source. And so that's a lot of work, but it's worth it, and we're glad we've done that as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Uh, Not sure how much you want to go into, but
Well, that's a
when
good
we,
start.
yeah,
I
okay.
mean, yeah. I mean, just a basic idea. And were you born in Maine, Robert?
I was not. I was born
Okay.
on a farm in the Midwest,
Okay.
and met my wife in college. So straight out of college, and we got married and moved to Maine. So
Nice. Because I'm
yeah,
not also a native Mainer. There's a saying or a rule here. I don't know if you've heard this, but I heard it as soon as I got here, which is you cannot be a native unless you were born here, or you have to move here, live the rest of your life, die, be buried, and then 5 years later, or 10, depending on who you talk to, you're a native. So I'm looking forward to that day myself personally.
yes,
Love this state with all my heart. I'm here by choice, and it's one of the reasons I'm trying to help you out, because I know you feel the same way, and I know you're sincere, and you're not doing this for fame and glory and power. You're doing it because you were genuinely concerned about what was going on in our state, and
yeah.
definitely appreciate that. So, what do you see as the critical issues with regard to issues we face here in Maine? I have my list, but I'm not even going to go there. I just want to get it organically from you. But tell us what you're really concerned about here in Maine.
Yeah, I think there's a long list, right? And I guess I have the advantage of I've been campaigning for over a year now, and just going around the state. I've hit so many towns and talked to thousands and thousands of Mainers, and the reality is that my list that I started with before I even announced the campaign has really not changed a whole lot. Immigration was not on there a couple years ago, and it's absolutely on the list now. So immigration is one of those, specifically. Um, what should legal immigration look like, and how should we handle illegal immigration? I do think there are two very different things when we're talking immigration. So that's on the list. Education reform and parental rights are really
Good.
high on my list as well. And government overreach. That's a broad topic, but it takes many different forms. And I am a small government guy. I look and say, and as I've been touring the state, really the overall gist of how Mainers feel, again, painting with a wide brush, but is just leave me alone, right? That's very much a Maine mentality as I talk to people, and I get it, I understand, and the best government is the smallest government. However, I would also challenge them, and I do. I'm like, okay, but you can't just leave the government, right? Like you can't. You have to be involved. You have to pick
Yes,
them. You have to put them in place and hold them accountable,
I agree.
or what you have is what you're going to be getting. And
Yep.
so I
Well
am
put.
a small government guy, and that also includes taxes, right? I think that the one of the big benefits of a small government is you're reducing the amount that it costs to run that government, and that should translate into cutting taxes, as well as fiscal responsibility and governmental efficiency. So all of those are really on the top of my list of concerns and things that people have brought to me, and things that are on my radar.
Good, good. Let me throw a couple logs on this fire here because you and I talked a little bit, and I think you know me by now well enough to know that I'm pretty outspoken. I say right what's on my mind, and the older I get, the less filter I have. Um, we, the people of Maine, have voted. I believe it's 3 times we voted down the so-called CMP corridor. We, the people of Maine, said no. We do not want a giant swath cut through our entire freaking state from the northern border all the way down to the southern border. No. And yet here we are with a giant swath being cut in our state against our specific wishes. And that makes me very angry. So that's a big issue for me. And oddly enough, I'm deeply embedded in the lobsterman's plight, even though I'm personally not a lobsterman. I don't make a living at it. I've met a fair number of lobstermen, and they're pretty salty kind of people, and they fight among themselves quite a bit too.
Yeah.
But they are really salt of the earth, and they're making a living doing this the same way their fathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, and so on did this. And there is a ridiculous, insane mindset that the federal government or some federal agency has some sort of authorization or jurisdiction over them, and I contend that they don't. And I've stated this very plainly, and I'm very certain I'm correct. That we, the people, never delegated authority to the federal government to tell us how to do virtually anything, and especially how to fish for lobster. And this environmental agency, NOAA, out in, I guess they're in Oregon or someplace like that, is trying to maintain that Maine lobster gear poses a danger to right whales, which I submit to you, and I've looked into this, and it is ludicrous. It's insane. It's completely laughable. And the common consensus seems to be, according to my research, that the whales are being hit by ships and injured and or dying, get tangled up in flotsam and jetsam on the ocean, which, yes, may contain some lobster rope, because sometimes lobster rope gets separated from the trap, and sometimes pieces of it do float over here and there. That doesn't mean it wrapped up the whale and killed it. So now we're facing all these federal regulations, and the lobstermen are literally saying, like, we're not going to be able to make a living. And for me, this is a missed opportunity, because Maine lobster is world famous. People in Japan will sit down at a restaurant, and if that menu says Maine lobster, they'll pay a small fortune to have a lobster flown to Japan from Maine. So that's big. Offshore wind, the entire offshore wind thing is, in my world, ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. And again, when did we, the people of Maine, say we wanted this? Is anyone out there call and say, I love this idea? Please go ahead and the whole coast of Maine is facing these threats. The Searsport, what was it they were talking about putting in down there? A shipping cargo facility or something to that effect. I don't remember specifically what it was. Do you?
I don't remember exactly what it was in Searsport. I do know that Governor Mills just was rejected on her first attempt at funding it with federal money
Yes,
just this
I saw
week.
that.
Which is a great win. But
Yes.
they're also, to your point, and I just went to a meeting down at St. George, I believe it was, about the offshore wind a couple weekends ago. And it was a great meeting, met a lot of lobstermen and fishermen.
Good.
And discussed what does that look like. And the reality is, you mentioned the people on the coast being affected, but I'm going to make an argument that it's all of us in Maine, right? Even over here in South Paris, I'm going to be affected by this, because the reality is wind and solar are both highly inefficient as far as power sources. And the more that we as a state put our dependence on solar and on wind power, we're subsidizing that as a government, and we're putting that money in because it's not efficient enough that it would work without subsidies. Companies wouldn't do it. And that is what you're seeing right now as our power bills, we're one of the highest in the nation for power bills, and it's only going up. And that's because we are putting more and more dependence on that instead of efficient uses of power. And so The offshore wind is even more inefficient and costly than the regular on land wind. And so the more we
And
go down that road,
environmentally destructive also, if
correct.
people really understood the actual infrastructure that they're putting in there, and it's just tearing up the seabed. It's an abomination. And again, at the end of the day, we the people of Maine never said we wanted this. They didn't ask our permission. We didn't tell them to do it. They just start doing it. They're presumptuous. Sorry to interrupt you. Go, please
No,
continue.
and going along those lines, right? This gets out of the state of Maine. It goes more into the federal, but the reality is we have all of these, and it's the same in the state of Maine on a lower level. But we have all of these bodies of government that are unelected. They're just bureaucrats making
Yep.
decisions because our elected officials are not making them. And the reality is they have abdicated their powers, making the federal government ridiculously powerful. And the state has done the same thing. We had it last year. There was a scare that ended up not going through with electric vehicles, where our elected officials have abdicated their power to this group of unelected appointed officials to make decisions, major decisions, apparently, where they were considering requiring all Mainers to buy electric vehicles if they're going to be new, right? And again, I can't not vote for them to tell them, hey, I hate your decision, because they're not elected by me, and this is a problem.
Huge. Yeah, thank you for that. So now, of course, everyone that embarks upon this journey that you're embarking upon right now, I think of Paul LePage, and this is not a discussion about Paul LePage at any point, that some love him, some hate him, so on and so on. But I believe in my heart that he had the same sort of general philosophies and purpose in mind when he went into office. He was really committed. He wasn't a politician. He didn't get elected to a bunch of positions and then run for governor. He was a businessman, and he got in there because I think he wanted to do the right thing. And I was pleasantly surprised with a lot of the things he did, and I certainly appreciated that the things that he did that were um, along the lines of working in the interests of we the people. But he ran into this just giant, staggering bureaucracy that we the people of Maine have allowed to infest our state house. Um, and I was just curious, what your thoughts are about that, and how you're going to address that, and what, if you have any plans, and just a general idea of what you will do when you're going to be faced inevitably with that challenge.
So yes, you're completely right, and the reality is we need to. I don't have any concrete plans at this moment on how like step by step it can be done. I have the benefit of a long runway, because again, just so your viewers can know, it's 2026. We is when the next governor change will happen, and so
Yep.
I did start early because I don't have any of the political background. I was a selectman in the town of Paris for 4 years, and that's the extent of my political experience. And so I do think that that is a benefit for me, just like it was for Paul LePage, because I think the people are ready to move on from established elite politicians. However, the reality is to make a lot of movement and progress from the Blaine House, it will take a favorable legislature. And so voting this November, next month, right, we need to vote in legislators that are ready to make a change, ready to make different decisions, and to move Maine forward. So I or any other conservative, like-minded governor would be able to make the changes. But we have to hit it head on, and we have to look at that and uh, ultimately not be okay with the bureaucracy and make the changes.
Agreed. And I think that most people in Maine feel the same way, but we feel disenfranchised. My own quest has been to unite enough people into a coalition of any sort. I started with Angry Citizen, but Angry Citizen Maine works the same way. Enough of us get together, all of us collectively with one voice, tell these people this is what we want, this is what we demand, and you will do what we say, then they will. And granted, it's easier if they're sympathetic, but it still can be done. But what it takes is, it takes everyone to get involved. Everyone has to do their part, which is making your voice heard. I can't tell you the number of times people have told me it doesn't matter. You write to them, it doesn't matter. You call them, you text them, whatever, it doesn't matter. It does matter. Okay. And we see the results when enough of us get involved and angry about what we see and demand change. We do see that change, but it takes effort, and people are lazy. They don't want to get up off the couch and make a phone call and say, listen, I'm not very happy with this whole CMP corridor, and I'm demanding as a Mainer and a constitutional Mainer that you honor the process and you honor the wishes of we the people of Maine, and let them know. So and I'm doing my best with that, and will continue to do so, and we'll continue to support you. And when and if you get into office and you make an initiative that I approve of, I will absolutely support you, and I will ask as many people as possible to do so as well, because I believe it can work. And I'm not going to leave things the way they are right now to my children and grandchildren. It's insane. The taxes are through the roof. We have poverty. We're not a very healthy state. We have a lot of health problems in Maine, and all the problems that we face can be addressed. We just have, like you just said, literally, you just have to get the right people in there, and or hold their feet to the fire, so to speak. I'm not advocating violence, so everybody calm down. Just make sure that it gets done, and make sure that we reward the people that do the job correctly by supporting them and re-electing them, and punish the people that don't by getting them out of office, if necessary, impeaching them, which we the people have the authority to do and should be using that tool. So,
Yeah, one of the things that, if I can just kind of springboard off of that,
go
you
ahead.
mentioned, the people being lazy, right? And that is certainly that's part of the story there. But as I talk to people, I think defeated would be the word I use, right?
Fair.
And as I talk to people, they care and they would be willing to do something, but they don't see a point. They don't see it's useless. And I think part of the reason they're coming to that conclusion is mainstream media, which is most, with the exception of Maine Wire, right? It's most of the media in Maine,
Yes.
which is owned by a nonprofit, quote unquote, from George Soros, and so the mainstream media in Maine is telling a story, and that story is, hey, it's all sunshine and roses, and you're weird if you think that this is wrong, whatever that topic is. And so they truly, I was having a conversation during COVID with somebody, and I just told him how I was feeling. I just told him my thoughts on COVID, which, by the way, was not favorable, on, if you can imagine, on how it was handled. And he just looked at me and he's just like, really? He's like, I'm not alone. I feel that. And I'm like, no, they want you to feel alone. And the reality is, you're not alone. And as I tour the state, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of us out there. Some are motivated to go out, make a difference, do whatever it takes to fight to be heard, and others are defeated. And it's a matter of waking them up and saying, "Listen, it's worth it. Let's make some racket. Let's do it."
Well said. Very well said. Thank you. And I've said the same thing myself, and I completely agree with you. You get frustrated at what feels like you're isolated, that they're telling you these stories and things that don't add up and don't make sense. And as soon as you start thinking that maybe it isn't adding up, it isn't making sense, you're called some crazy delusional conspiracy theorist. And we are constantly bombarded by images and so-called stories that are, and if you examine them, and folks with a very skeptical and practical eye, examine the news, listen to what they're saying, and put it to the test, scrutinize it. The truth bears scrutiny. I've said this many times. So when they say, you'll notice, for example, in TV news programs, they will frequently say things like, sources say blah, 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 right? So sources, now they've just made whatever they want reality by telling you that somewhere someone unknown said this, that They've decided it's reliable and true because that's why they're telling you the sources said this, and obviously the sources must be correct. And they'll use terms like experts
I
say.
was just going to say, we've
That's
graduated, right? We
expert
now have
testimony.
experts that tell us
Absolutely.
everything, right?
And they
Well, that's
experts
funny
know this.
because we can find experts on either side, and the experts, don't agree.
And at the end of the day, we have to use real science. And I love how the word, even right now, the word science is misused. Science says this, science says that. Science doesn't say anything. Science is a process, a very specific, methodical process that is used to discern whether or not claims are true or false based on examining the evidence and thinking using rational thought to determine, does this sound like it makes sense? Do the facts back it up? Can I verify it? Um, that process leads us to correct conclusions. And unfortunately, I've been down so many rabbit holes now that I'm no longer surprised when I investigate some utterly bizarre claim and find out that, yeah, it actually looks like it is true. And the media is going to tell you that you're crazy. And you're not. The truth bears scrutiny. Facts lead you to correct conclusions, and the conclusions are what they are, no matter how much you don't want it to be true. And we know our government is corrupt. We know our government's corrupt at all levels. Those of us that have done any investigation whatsoever into election fraud know that there was rampant election fraud in the last election, and there certainly was here in Maine. And they just won't investigate it because they get very irritated and angry at you for even suggesting it. And the news uses the term false claims of election fraud. They will never talk about election fraud without using the term false claims. It's always false claims of election fraud. Well, how is that proven? I'd like to see the proof. Show me. Show me how you arrived at the decision that it was the most secure election in history. I want to see your facts and I want to know what they are. And of course, they don't tell you that, because that is when things fall apart. As soon as you start investigating, looking for facts, their story starts to fall apart.
Yeah,
So
and going along that road a little bit, even just recently, the last few weeks, Mainwire did a story on uh, basically some election fraud. They didn't come out and say that the illegals voted, right?
right.
I like what they said. They said the illegals were registered to vote and somebody voted in their name. So not even going to say these people themselves did the actual action of voting, right? But either way, it's fraudulent. And when it went to Secretary of State, they haven't, Shanna Bellows, they have not looked into it yet. And
Shocking.
yeah, I know.
Janet Bellows won't look into election fraud.
I know. I know. And the reality is, right, no matter what party you are, the reason the current date of Democrats are not doing it is because it's in their favor. But if you remember pre-Trump,
Yes.
right, or when Trump got in 2016, who was shouting about election fraud? Who was shouting that there was,
True.
stuff going on?
It's
And
true.
so if Trump were to get in 2024, who will be shouting about election fraud? And the reality is, no matter both parties, the US and Maine will benefit from secure elections, from elections where
Yep.
I can go, you know what, my person didn't win. That really sucks. We're going to have to try harder next time, and accept the vote. But we're at the stage until states like Maine step up and say, we're going to put processes in place that the people are sure that this is a secure election. We're going to have every election questioned.
And we should. And again, the truth bears scrutiny. So if the results of the election are valid, then we should be able to audit it. An
Open
audit
it up.
isn't, yeah, an audit isn't like changing the results. An audit is simply, let's look at them and examine them and verify that they are accurate. And if you're telling the truth, it shouldn't scare you. There shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah.
Why would you have a problem with it unless you're hiding something?
And
Otherwise, go ahead.
yeah, and if you truly want what is in the best interest of the state and the people, let's say we do find fraud. Okay, there's our opportunity to fix it,
Yep.
right? Like shining light on it. Oh no, we're going to see something dark. Okay, if we see something dark, we're going to fix it. We didn't know it was there. We're going to fix this thing so it's not there in the future.
And to punish those who do it. to
Accountability.
hold them accountable. Absolutely, accountability, 100%. Yeah, wow. So, of all the issues that I've listed and that you've listed, is there anything that stands out to you as a sort of like on day one, this will be the one at the top of my list? I know it's a tough question.
It is a tough question. So I'll be honest. I don't have a day one yet.
Okay.
I've been thinking, what does day one look like, right?
Right.
But I will also say that uh, one of the big topics that needs to be addressed right away is the topic of illegal immigration. We often think about, because it's the most in the media, the illegals coming up from the south. But the reality is, Maine is a border state, right? And we have illegals coming straight into our state from the north as well.
Yeah.
We're affected by both, and I believe, and from as I'm talking to people around the state, the biggest concern, the reason I go to illegal immigration as something that needs to be addressed right away, is the reality is that is affecting our housing prices. That is affecting the cost of living. That is affecting taxes. We are putting an astronomical amount of money towards helping these Office of New Mainers as
Taxpayer money, taxpayer
correct,
money
to
coming out of
non-citizens.
the pockets of those of us here in Maine who are working very hard just to put food on the table for ourselves. And we don't mind helping other people, but if there are people in Maine who need help, why are we importing other people if we can't help the ones we already have here in Maine who need help, especially our veterans? Why the hell would we be bringing in people from other countries? And the people that do that, they're not paying it, right? How many? I want to know how many immigrants, asylum seekers, whatever term people want me to use. How many has Jared Golden personally housed?
Right. Right. Or any of them, right? Any of the elites, right?
Exactly.
And believe me, my heart goes out, and I have always done everything we can uh, to help those who are in need.
Agreed.
And my brother-in-law is a legal immigrant from Romania, and absolutely love him. And I think he brings a lot of great stuff to the state. But again, the key is he was willing to follow the laws that we
Right.
as a country have in place. And I, I'm great with legal immigration. Again, we've had that process for decades and decades in place. And for the most part, I mean, certainly you can tweak it, but for the most part, it was working until we decided to not use it. And we need to follow. If somebody is willing on day one to break our laws, that's not who we need in the state.
I would agree. And I think that it's safe to say that most people feel the same way you do. Most people I know personally that I've met through not just in Maine, but Americans, okay, we do help people. We try to help those who need help. And that's why, unfortunately, sometimes we get scammed. And that's, I think, one of the reasons that our government has grown so wildly out of control. Is they're telling us we need these things, we need these taxes, we need this big military, we need 800 million military bases all over the world. And we want to believe them because we don't want to believe they're lying to us. So we want to help people. We want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But we want, and I think 99% of us in this country want the people that come here to come here legally. Uh-oh. I'm getting a bandwidth problem here. Give me a second.
Yep,
Still hear
no
me?
problem.
Okay, good. Yeah, my bandwidth just dropped to 0, so the dark overlords are on top of me. This always happens. But I believe we do want to help people, but we want to help the people that are immediately around us. And if we can reach a state of prosperity in our nation, then we have the ability to help others who need help. But the end of the day, we want it to be legal. We want them to follow the rules, don't skirt the rules, and then say, I'm just going to ignore them and do what I want. And as you said, start off my very existence here in this country by breaking the law.
Yeah, and what are we doing communicating to them, right? By allowing them to break the law on day one. And we need to be a state and a country of law and order and consistency. And so no matter what your skin tone, no matter what your economic background, no matter any of that stuff, we have laws, and we need to follow those. We need to enforce those equally and consistently across all those lines.
I agree completely. We have a few people in the audience. We've had a couple comments, and I was curious if anyone in the audience has any questions that you would like to ask Robert. Feel free to put them in the comments. I'll go ahead and run them by him. And thank you for your support. Thank you, Beth. I see you there, and thank you to to Jane Dore Goodwin, who posted this nice comment. We agree with you, Jane. I would like to hopefully see a really powerful involvement by we the people of Maine, and I think maybe the time has finally come for that. I know a lot of people in Maine are very, very angry about the things that have happened, maybe as much as I am willing to do something. So, if we could all kind of get on the same page that that's what we want to do and stop kind of bickering among ourselves, which we do a lot, I think we could see some real progress. And I would like to see in 2026, I would like to see a complete Mainer, we the people of Maine takeover of our government, and all the people there held accountable. And personally, I'd like to see Janet Mills held accountable, because the governor of Maine does not have the lawful authority to order us to close our businesses or stay in our homes. She wildly exceeded her authority. She perjured her oath. She was acting under color of law, which is a felony, sicking agents and police on people for not doing her bidding, following her orders. Executive orders are not laws. All these things, I keep waiting for these to really come out, and for those people that were involved to really be held accountable. And I would like to see that happen, and I hope that it can. And I think we'll be able to hope for these kinds of results if we have a really significant basis of support. But it has to be like a lot of, I'm talking half the state has to mobilize at least and get involved, and I would hope that we could see that. But I don't know if you think that's a reasonable expectation or goal, or what your thoughts are on that.
I think it's a great goal, and the reality, right? Like, when I look back at even our last elections, they've been close, right? Even though we look at the three branches of government right now in Augusta, and it feels extremely dark blue, because all three are because you have the House, the Senate, and the governor all blue. The reality is, votes wise, we weren't actually that far off. And so I would say Maine is purple, right? We're really close. And so the other piece that I've heard as far as statistics is there is a huge portion, this is nationwide, and I'm sure it's true in Maine as well, but there's a huge portion of Christians that don't come out to vote. And another very big demographic of hunters and sportsmen. And so the reality is Maine has a lot of those. And so if Maine follows the national trend in those groups of people not voting historically, that means we have a much bigger potential for swinging. If we were able to wake up the Christians and the sportsmen and hunters and fishermen to get out just one day a year or 2 days a year, get out and vote, and then go back to the woods, right? We could make a statement and swing the state in a way that we could make some significant changes. If we could get them out of the woods for a bigger chunk of time to sit there and express and speak their opinions and make them known and hold people accountable, we would be golden. But at this point, I would take just coming out to vote and then going back.
When I first went to one of the protests in Augusta during the so-called lockdown, and there was a pretty healthy contingent of people there that day, and I was very hopeful because we were very much aligned in our purpose. And I had a few things to say, so I got up and I said what I needed to say. And when I went to the next event, a man approached me I did not know, and he reached out to shake my hand, and he shook my hand and he said, "I wanted to thank you." He said, I wanted to catch you because I saw you the last time you were here and I heard what you said, and I wanted to thank you." And this was deeply, deeply touching and moving for me. He said, I think his words were, "I am not good with words, but you said what I wanted to say. Your words were what I wanted to say and the way I wanted to say them. Thank you for saying that." And he shook my hand in a very firm grip for a long time. I'm fairly certain his name was Robert. Robert, if you're out there, thank you. You gave me a great dose of courage and strength that day by reaching out to me, because a lot of times I don't hear from people, and a lot of times my initiatives don't go anywhere and my words don't go anywhere, and I've done petitions and they don't really go anywhere, and I start thinking, well, no one's listening and no one cares, and maybe I've wasted the last 5-10 years of my life that I've been doing this. I could have been relaxing and spending time with my granddaughters and enjoying my hobbies, and because I wasn't ordered to wear a mask, I wasn't ordered to get a shot, I wasn't ordered to stay home from work. So I'm not a lobsterman. I don't, if they make you
Right.
use, gold chain to fish, I don't, it doesn't affect me. I don't really even eat lobster. God help me. I'm sorry, but it's not my favorite thing. My point is that, we have to stand together. We have to make our voices heard collectively, demand that the uh, elected servants do what they're supposed to do, and hold them accountable. And if we all get together, enough of us get together, we will see it happen. So, beating that horse to death, I guess we'll move on to the next
Well,
subject.
I think, you know, I think you make a really good point, and again, that applies to uh, you in that particular case, right? You were speaking and somebody else was listening, but the reality is uh, that guy may have felt Robert may have felt alone until he heard you say it. And so even if you're not behind a microphone, even if you're just having a conversation with Robert, he no longer feels alone. And so my challenge to everybody listening and watching this would be, have that conversation with friends, have that conversation with people in your closest circles, and let them know they're not alone. Because again, our mainstream media and everybody else in the state is trying to make you feel like you are alone, and the reality is you're not. And so we need to engage, and we need to have those conversations to wake people up and them around us.
Well said. So, in terms of media, I want to give a shout out to my amazing friends and allies at the Flame. I have very strongly supported this publication since they were created. My amazing friends Anna and Nicole, who run the Flame, are some of the most amazing patriots I've ever met. Creating this is hard work. You can subscribe. It's very inexpensive. You go to theflameusa.com, subscribe, and it's like $1.99 or $2.99, maybe it is, for an electronic subscription. So please do. The Flame USA. This article was actually written by a friend of mine. Her name's Donna, and I've known Donna for a few years. She's been working really, really hard in the whole Patriot movement. We worked together on getting the sheriff's conferences going nationwide. So love you, Donna. Good, well-written article. I love it. So let's, for a moment, kind of go into some specifics about the functions of the legislature, because I've been displeased with a lot of the what I call shenanigans that are going on in the legislature. And tell me, what are your thoughts on that, and maybe what do you, just in general, and what do you see going on in the future as far as them calling the sessions secretly and all the other shenanigans they pulled?
And waiting until 2 a.m. when the other side has gone home, right? The reality is, my argument would be, if you have a bill that can pass on its own merits because it's a good bill, then it shouldn't matter who shows up, right? And so the only time it really matters and you need to play these political games is when you have a very questionable bill that only your diehard supporters will vote for. And so it blows my mind, and it's political gamesmanship, and it's pathetic. The one that really,
Agreed.
really ticked me off, quite honestly, was LD 227 was a perfect example. Again, I'm not in the legislature, so I won't have the words, the actual title correct. But basically, there's this way that they can submit a bill on time before the session starts and say, here's the title of the bill, and it has like 5 words in there. And then at some stage before it's actually discussed and voted on, they put in the rest of the words. So this bill, LD 227, was a horrific bill, and it didn't have words until actually to the public, to us, we the people. It still didn't have words on the day that it was being talked about. And so unless you knew somebody, and I happen to, as do other people, right? I happen to have, I won't call them friends, but Facebook friends that cared about it, Republicans that were against it. And they posted, legislators, they posted online and said, here's the link to it. So they could see it, but on the state website, we went to it, and even on that Monday, I couldn't see anything. And so the reality is we, the people, couldn't see what we were supposed to be going to speak against or to or for our government on this. And that's just wrong. That's wrong on so many levels.
It's abominable. It's a
again,
disgrace.
If you think this is a good bill, great. Put it out there, be proud of it, let the people have their say, let the people see it, let the people know weeks in advance, months in advance, hey, I need to take off work and I'm going to show up and I'm going to let my legislators know how I feel about this. And so I happen to have the ability to some degree or another to be able to tweak my schedule and change it. And so I took the day off and I went there and I spoke against it. But there's thousands and thousands of Mainers that can't do that. And so they need to know ahead of time and create a level of transparency that is real and let the chips lie. Where does this thing fall? What do our citizens really think about this, and then vote accordingly? And that's exactly what's not happening right now.
Amen. And also the people that pull these shenanigans need to be booted right out of office. And that should be very public. Like that should be headline news in Maine that they did that. It shouldn't be something you have to look for. That should be do you believe what these people did? Look what they did. Can you believe this? And everyone in Maine should be outraged by this conduct unless you're part of the shenanigans.
Yeah.
And if you're part of the shenanigans, then you wouldn't be outraged by it, but anyone else would. And even if you support the people that are doing the shenanigans, you should still be outraged when they do it and go, whoa, hold on, I supported you, but what you're doing is wrong. It's morally reprehensible. It's sleazy. It's fraudulent. It's, in my personal opinion, it's criminal. I think that's criminal fraud. I really do. But that's, I'm a little extreme sometimes in my views, but that I believe is fraudulent. If you're deliberately leaving off the words and before you try to pass it, that's just fraudulent. That's wrong. So we need to punish these people.
And the reality is, right, why is this allowed? Because I've asked this question, and the answer I get is it can be hard to get a bill fully written, submitted on time. And I look at it and say, the reality is they have way too many bills that they're considering anyway. And if you can't get it submitted on time, then I guess submit it next year, right? Or start earlier. That's the way it works in the business world, right?
That's where I was going to go.
Yep. Get it done on time.
Whose fault is it? Whose fault is it that it's not done on time?
Yeah.
We the people are at fault for that?
Yeah.
It's crazy. When I had an interesting conversation with my boss once, my boss actually very close with me, and we have some great conversations. And he said to me at one point when he was a kid, he said he learned that what legislators do, and his mother said, well, legislators, go to the state house in the state and the federal, and they, make laws, pass laws. And he said, I thought to myself, well, how many laws do we need? Like, is this really a full-time job that you can get where you do nothing but pass laws? Like, how many laws? There's thousands and thousands and thousands of laws on the books, and most of them are useless, and a number of them are unconstitutional. And we, the people of Maine, and we, the people of the United States, need to reject them summarily every time they try to pass something unconstitutional. Say no. And not only that, if you try to do that, you're perjuring your oath. You're not the person that should be in that job. The rules are solid. They're not flexible. That's my opinion. Anyway, so.
Yeah, so the unconstitutionality of LD 227 came up. And the response that I heard, this was not in a public conversation, but the response
Right.
that I heard was, "That's not my job. The courts will decide that." And I'm like, if you know it's unconstitutional, it is your job to not pass it.
Amen.
Right? Like, it's just mind blowing.
I uh, I have several friends in the legislature, and so I have some interesting conversations with them about some of the stuff that goes on in the legislature. And one of them, Representative Reagan Paul from Winterport, is a good friend of mine. We've been friends quite a while, and she's an amazing woman and an absolute patriot and a rock star in the state house. And we were talking, and she said to me that apparently, if you're in the legislature and you point out that one of your fellow legislators is behaving in a manner that's unconstitutional or doing things that are unconstitutional or proposing them, that constitutes some sort of harassment, and you are then censured by your colleagues for daring to point out the fact that one of your
Yeah.
colleagues is being unconstitutional. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing that we've gotten to this point. It's just
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
never would have seen it being this bad. Anyway,
Reagan Paul
so
does an amazing job.
yeah,
I have so much
she's
respect
great.
for her. Yes.
Yep, I remember we talked on the phone a couple times, and she was really wary. And she's like, Dana, I've been just walking around knocking on doors all day long. And that's what she did. She went all over her district. She knocked on doors. She talked to the people, met them. You know, she's an amazing, principled, smart, savvy person, and we're really blessed to have her. And yeah, this is a pitch because she's coming up for reelection. And if she doesn't get reelected, I'm going to be very angry at the people at
Yes. If you're
Winterport.
in Reagan Paul's district, vote for her. Highly recommend.
Please, if you don't, there's just something wrong with you, I swear, because she is absolutely the right person for that job. I told her at one point, I said, I think you were born to do this. I think this is your vocation. So, you know, and I wish her all the best and success. And hopefully, you know, we can fill all these seats with people that are constitutionally minded. I'd love to
Yeah.
see it.
Yes. Absolutely agree.
So we're kind of coming to the end of the allotted time that I like to go, just to give people a little, you know, bite-sized experience for the most part. Any parting words that you want to say to the state of Maine? This is your chance. You can say anything you want, and hopefully we'll have as many people in the state of Maine watch this as we possibly can and listen to what this man is saying and make an educated decision and a moral decision about how you cast your vote for governor in 2026. Robert?
Yeah, thank you. The reality is why I'm running. I talked about them in the beginning, right? It's my kids, and even though I don't have any at this moment, I'm hoping at some point, relatively soon, they can wait. I'll have grandkids, and how are we going to be handing the state over when we pass it on to the next generation? And that is the crux of why I'm running. As I look at it, I'm looking started with COVID and moved on. And the reality is our state is not in a place where I could be proud to hand it to the next generation. I don't know how successful they would be, whether they'll be able to find a house and or find a job that pays. And so the reality is we need to look beyond ourselves. We need to look at the next generation. We need to look at education. We need to look at our government and the role that it's playing or not playing. And we need to be willing to sacrifice for ourselves to do what is right. But it's Vivek Ramaswamy, when he was running for president, kept referring to a 1776 moment. And the reality is, it's been 250 years. And we need to have that declaration of independence. We need to make it known to the elites that are making decisions for we the people that it's not okay, and we need to take our country back.
Agree. Fantastic. All right. Well, Robert, thank you for your time tonight and for you know, talking to me, and appreciate your very candid and forthright demeanor. And I have a lot of respect for you for doing this, because I know I am aware. I was tempted to do it myself several times, but so I'm aware of the work involved. And you know, God bless you for that. I wish you all the success in the world, and I'll certainly do everything I can to help you. And you know, let's maybe do this again in a couple of weeks or so, touch base and see where we stand on some of the issues at that point.
Sounds great. I appreciate it, Dana. Thank you for the time. Thank you for getting me in front of your followers. And I see comments here from Beth and Jane, and just thank you for showing up, for watching this. And again, let's the people of Maine. We've got just a couple weeks to make a big difference and make a big statement. So if you don't have plans to vote, get out there and vote. And if you can't make it on the 5th, get out there earlier. But we have a statement to make, and we have a state to change. So thank you. And I look forward to being on again at some point and extending the conversation.
Excellent. All right. God bless. Thanks again. And to all my viewers, thank you for tuning in and watching. I appreciate you very much. Appreciate all of you who support me. And again, go to theflameusa.com. Subscribe. You can pick up a paper copy if you want, just like this, like I do. And support those brave ladies out there that are speaking the truth and publishing a paper that can't be censored. God bless Maine. God bless America. I'm Dana, the Younger Citizen, signing off. Until next time, take care.